Hi, I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and this is the Bonsai Stuff Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I just got back from a lovely 10k walk around my local area. It's beautiful, sun shining, birds are chirping, middle of the day, and I got to see two tawny frogmouths. If you don't know what they are, you should Google it. Tawny, Tawny frogmouth. They're very similar to an owl, but they're not an owl, and they've got these quite large beaks. But got to see two of them in daylight, which is amazing. It's a very unusual event, so feeling very lucky. So I thought, perfect, get home, all inspired, get into the podcast, make another recording. So thanks for that. Thanks for nature kicking me into gear and getting me going, because it's I feel privileged. It's lovely when things like that happen. And the only reason I saw them was because as I was walking through, I was studying a beautiful Australian native, a eucalypt, and looking at its structure and whatever else down along the branches. There you are, lo and behold. And these things camouflage themselves in, and when I walk closer to see them, they actually, one of them goes very, very straight and straightens his head and his neck out, so it actually looked like it was just a branch on the tree. So if I hadn't been looking up, if I'd been looking down at my feet or my stupid phone, then there's no way I would have got that surprise. So anyway, that's the inspiration for this podcast. This podcast, I'm going to talk a little bit about my second trip to Japan, to Kouka-en in Osaka, where I studied over there for a couple of weeks, which was really good, really, really enjoyable. So I want to just spill some dirt on that one, and also just some other things that came across my mind during the week, as I've been working a lot on junipers, doing a lot of restyling and pruning back, and I want to just go through my strategy and what I do with them when I work on them, and just the thought process when I was going through designing and pruning branches. So that's all to come. So thanks for coming on board, and hopefully you'll stick around right to the end, and this will be one of those podcasts where you go, oh, that was enjoyable. So thanks very much. Part of what I love about travelling is just that, is the travelling process. So you go to foreign places and you make your way around, and you think there's no way, having never been to a place before, that you'll ever make it. And it's quite daunting, I suppose, until you throw yourself in there and go, yeah, whatever, I'll be right, I'm on it. So the trip to Osaka was back in 2013, so just under 10 years ago, to be honest, from where this podcast is recorded, and had to make a lot of transfers. So Melbourne, Victoria is where I'm based in Australia. I flew to the Gold Coast, a couple of states away, then swapped planes there to international to get a plane to Osaka, get to Osaka, Kansai Airport, then get a train to Osaka City, then had to get another local train to Ishibashi Station, which is near-ish to where Kouka-en, the nursery in Osaka, is. So travelling by myself, made it all the way there, and I've made a note that it was over 12 hours just in pure travel. That's not including all the downtime in between. So I do remember when I got there, it was after 11 o'clock at night by the time I got to the final destination. And what I love about bonsai and about Japan is that I was met at the station by a couple of the apprentices that were at Kouka-en at the time. A fellow by the name of David and Marco-san, who were both working there. So they met me at the station and walked me to the apartment, which is just around the corner, and it was stinking hot. Like, July was just so hot and humid. I remember just sweat peeling off me, carrying having left Melbourne in winter and arrived there in a hot, humid summer, being completely overwhelmed by it. But it was great. And then very first thing the next morning, I was met at my apartment again and shown that there's a method of transport to get to the nursery. So when I was at IGN, I'd get picked up wherever I stayed. If first trip I stayed with the family. After those trips, I stayed in different hotels and that sort of thing. So I'd always get picked up in a car. Whereas for this trip, it was, my method of transport was to ride a bike, which was very, very cool. going through all the back streets and whatever. And again, I got shown how to ride to the nursery, which is about 10 minutes away, so not too far, but a decent way. And I remember riding there thinking, there's no way I'm going to remember this. There's no way that I will remember that turn left here, turn right there, cross that road, watch out for the river, get back, park your bike, remember where you parked it because there's only about 4 million bikes in that one car park for the bikes, and to then make it back to your hotel. But, that's what travelling is. Travelling is the experience, and you absorb it, and you sort of amaze yourself every now and then as to what you can do. So the first day, it was really just getting settled in. And I remember Bjorn was there. Bjorholm was is the chief apprentice there at the time. And in fact, I think he might have even finished by that stage, but he was working there as a professional. And Mr. Fujikawa, whose nursery it was, they were away, so it was just myself and Kouka-en in the nursery. And I remember it was very different to IGN in that I got given a juniper whip, so just a very thin juniper, and got sort of put down onto a bench and said, "Right, go, do something, make this something." So it was a bit more than just a whip; it had a bit of foliage on it and branches and stuff like that. So the first, I suppose, assessment was to actually work out what my skill set was and where I was at with things before which I really liked. I thought it was a good way to do to be assessed, to work out your wiring technique and to work out what your vision was with the tree and how you bent move branches and all that sort of stuff, and what you could come up with as a design as well. And so that was sort of the first day, and it was more gets to about 5 o'clock, so it was like a 9 to 5 type scenario there. And knock off at 5 and get on the bike, and Kouka-en took me back, showed me the way again. I went, yep, cool, I know where to go. I turn here, I turn there, and, bang, there you go. Went and worked out my own dinner and sweated away in this tiny little apartment because it was so hot and humid. And then next day it was I was into it with, talking about, an assessment of the tree and with Mr. Fujikawa and Bjorn and working out sort of where I was at, and then we talked about what I wanted to learn and to do, and that was where I suppose I had the first real inkling of flow in design really getting put on the table as a key focus when you're designing bonsai. And it was, for me, it was another one of these eye-opening moments where I went, no, that's so cool. And then, you walk through the nursery and they talk about, apex here and flow and positioning of trunk and branches and, counterbalancing and all that stuff. And then when you walk through the nursery and I randomly picked a tree and went, yep, I love the look of that one. All right, now stop and look at it. Why do you love it? And with specific flow and movement in mind, I'd look at it and go, oh, that's why I like it, because this is, just what we talked about. I could actually physically see it in play, and that's how the design had been done. And so I know that when I got my next tree to work on, that was definitely something that I wanted to focus on as well, was that, there's a lot more in the design side of things. So I'd learnt a lot of horticultural stuff or information at IGN, and Kouka-en was heading down the path of the design side of things coming into play, which was, as I said, it was very cool. So you got to work through Shinpaku, got a second one, a more advanced tree to work on as well, and also got into the repotting process, which was something that I'd never done in the summer period because it's not something that we do here, but it was, we talked about aftercare and the availability for the Shinpaku or the type of junipers that we're working on to be able to be repotted in that part of Japan because of the humidity and aftercare and all that stuff. So there was a lot of horticultural stuff that got thrown into it, but it was more around the styling and design side that I felt that this trip was going to take an approach from the very, very start of the trip, and designing a tree so when you took a photo of it and having it positioned was really important to make it look really, really nice. So the nursery itself, I got the feeling was focusing on the look of the bonsai as opposed to the progression of the bonsai, which, as I said, was a very, very different approach to what I'd been involved with before. Whereas, one IGM was a nursery that built things based on, a 10-year plan to, okay, this little bud will then grow and it will become a branch, and then that branch will be wide and bent, and then we'll grow secondary branches, and then this is what will happen with that tree somewhere down the track. And whether it's, this generation that does it or the next generation, sooner or later that's going to happen. So I found that was one approach. But then the second approach with Osaka, Kouka-en, was we work with what we've got and we make it beautiful. We make it a piece of artwork, and it's as close to finished now as what it possibly can be. So it was it was different type of tree that was sourced for the nursery, and it was definitely a different clientele that were working with them as well. And it was an approach to be a high-end piece of artwork as opposed to a growing sort of nursery, which was really interesting. Also got into a lot of horticultural stuff in regards to defoliation. I learned a lot about defoliation while I was there, being in the summer month. Also worked out that I got given one small squat, about under 30 centimetres, trident maple with defoliation process. It had to have pruning done on the branches, had to have lightening of the thicker branches, had to be wide and shaped. And there was one little bud on it, one little branch that I got told by Mr. Fujikawa, very important. That's a very important branch. So it's like, okay, cool. All right, start the defoliation. I can work through that. Yep. Start the pruning process. Yep, no problems. All right, now start the wiring process. Start making this thing look nice. Yep. Okay, I think I'm ready. Oh, crap. Where's that branch gone? And I look down and look at it and think, oh, I've knocked it off. In all my haste and my clumsiness, for want of a better word, to design this and style this tree, I actually knocked off the branch or the bud that was deemed to be really important for the future design of this tree. And I was starting to sweat bullets. I went, oh, God. I've told him I'm almost done. Mr. Fujikawa's coming in when he finishes in the next room, and he's going to look at this tree, and I've gone and knocked off this branch. And I was like, oh, seriously, I was absolutely sweating. I was thinking, this is, I've done the worst thing I could possibly do. As soon as he walks in, I went, I'm so sorry, I've knocked that branch off. He looks and goes, doesn't matter. I went, really? And he couldn't speak English. Bjorn was translating. He said, it doesn't matter. The design doesn't need it. It's moved on. And you can't change what you can't change. It was like, oh, that's such a cool approach, because when things, and this, I use this all the time, and if you've listened to earlier podcasts about, the forced redesigns and when things fall off the bench or whatever it is, or you cut something off by mistake, or, branch falls off a tree above it and snaps something off, whatever. Well, you can't change what you can't change, so you just need to roll with the punches and keep moving forward. You never stop and go, well, that's it. I'm never, ever going to get this tree to that point, which is what I, honest to God, was thinking, was I've destroyed this tree by this one branch coming off. But, now I look back and I think it's just stupid to think and ridiculous to think like that, when really the design of the tree keeps evolving, and there's more beauty than just one branch. And if you've got a bonsai that's built around one branch, it's probably a pretty weak design from the get-go anyway. So so that was a really big one for me. And also that the way the nursery was structured, in that they have these retractable shade cloths, which, it was 35 degrees there, and 150% humidity. Sweat was just peeling off me. I couldn't get enough water in my body to keep up with what I was sweating at the time. And they had these retractable shade cloths, which was a great system. I remember taking photos of it and thinking, they've got these wires, they've got these, loops around the shade cloth, and it was just simple. It was easy. It's something which every day took them, no more than a couple of minutes to put the shade cloth up. And at night time, when they wanted to let the hot air out and let the cool air in at night, they could retract them and put them back again. So it put in play with me for my own system and my own setup, and basically everything I do with bonsai, it's got to be easy, because if it's easy, you'll do it. Whereas if putting up shade cloth is a 45-minute job, you'd look at your watch and check the temperature forecast and go, it's not going to be that hot. Might just leave it today. It's only going to be 43 degrees Celsius. Probably doesn't need it. It'll be okay. Whereas if it's something that takes a couple of seconds or a minute to drag it across, put it in place, lock it in, done. You'll do it. You look at the temperature forecast. Oh, it's probably going to crack. Low 30s. Yeah, all right, I'll put it up. No problems. Easy. It's a simple job. And at night time, when you want that cool air to come in, you don't want to leave the shade cloth up for 6 months at a time. So you retract it. You just drag it back, put it tight back, secure it, make sure it's not going to blow around. Another minute, no problems. You'll do it easy. So I got to see that in their setup, and it was interesting to see that there are definitely easy ways of doing some of these common tasks that we do. And anyway, so I definitely found a couple of differences with the nursery itself, and my approach was, I was there at the gates waiting for the door to be opened every morning. I'd get there early, I'd be used to starting about 6:30 in the morning, and I was there and I was chafing at the bit, and I'd ride my bike there and be no one there. The place wouldn't open up till 8:30, something like that, because it was more of a, I don't know, it just didn't feel like it had the push where the live-in apprentices were sort of 24/7 with their bonsai, and to get to 5 o'clock at night and I'd be told, yep, that's it, come on, off you go, day's finishing today. So it was had a real sort of 9 to 5 feel to it, where it wasn't the pressure that or not, the pressure's probably not the right word, but it wasn't that intensity of 24/7 bonsai, which was nice for a change too, because at night time we get to go out and have a couple of beers and go for dinner somewhere and be able to put my feet up and sort of absorb culture as well as the bonsai side of things. So it was like a chalk and cheese visit for me from that point of view, and getting to see another side to Osaka, which I'd never been to before. So being my second learning trip to Japan to absorb bonsai, to be that sponge, and the time in between my first trip and this trip, I'd really put in a lot of time, a lot of hard yards on things. Like I'd really focused heavily on my wiring. I'd really focused heavily on my pruning and all the little techniques of, wound management and all that stuff. So I found with this trip I sort of progressed a lot quicker to different things. And there was one point about a week into the trip where I was pushing. I remember in my head I was like, the quicker and the more efficiently you work, and the better you are with it, the less mistakes you make, the more exposure you're going to get. So rather than getting a tree and sitting on a tree for 3 or 4 days, it was like, it's 3 or 4 hours. You've got to turn this thing around, and not be disgraceful with it, and give it the respect the tree deserved, but just to be in the moment, to put on the blinkers and just say, my whole focus right now is nothing more than what is in front of me. That's it, 100%. And I remember at the time I was knuckling down. I'd put myself. I was in a separate room to everybody else, so there's no chit chat, there's no banter, and it was just like me and the tree and my tools and the wire. And if I had a question about something, I'd zip around and say, "Hey, quick, sorry to interrupt. What about this?" And it'd be a yes, no, quick, or hey, whatever, and I'd zip back and go right into it. So I found that I was getting through trees at a pretty good rate, which was great. And there was this one day where Mr. Fujikawa had to head off to into Tokyo to deliver some trees and pick up some other trees from one of the auction sites. I was going to go to an auction site and buy trees to bring back to the nursery to work on, to style, to whatever. And before he'd left, he'd picked out 5 trees and put them aside for me, which when I walked in that day, I remember the smile nearly cracking ear to ear, that I was worked to a point where, that sort of he trusted me enough or was confident enough in me that he could leave a range of trees and just sort of go, I'm away for a couple of days, here's 5 trees, get into it and see what you think. and see what you can do. And it was good. It wasn't like, well, here's one tree. There's, you got 2 days without me being here before something else comes. We'll sort it out later on. It was like, well, there's 5 trees. And I looked at them. They were all really nice trees, There was a little Japanese black pine that needed decandling and needle plucking and a bit of a cleanup with some wiring and stuff like that too. There was more junipers, more shimpaku. There was trident maples. There was a nice assortment of beautiful trees at all different stages that needed different work done that was left 100% up to me to work on. And it was I felt really, really good. So, like I said, it was almost like the work I'd done on my own in between, and where I'd been pushing myself privately to get things right, like my wiring. It was sort of paying dividends. It's like anything, I suppose. Anything that you train for, or you work on, or you aspire to be good at, whether it's playing guitar or it's running a marathon or whatever. There's so much goes into the background, the mundane stuff that we do time and time again to perfect or hone our skills, that really sooner or later you reap the rewards of your hard work. And that's where, honest to God, I felt I was at. And it was a nice experience. And I was still to the point where I'd have something where I wanted to remove a branch or do this or do that. I'd go, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Or if I wanted to make, a shari line up a trunk, I'd get the chalk out, I'd draw the shari line, I'd flag the branches I was going to gin. And out of respect, I'd say, hey, this is what my design is. This is what I'm thinking. What do you guys think about this? And it would be, oh yeah, that's cool. I like this. I like that. Have you thought about that? And it would be like, oh, cool. Okay. Go back to the drawing board. Now, what about this? Yep. Cool. Go. Proceed with what you had to do. So it was really nice. And there was one point where I'd worked on this shimpaku, and I'd worked on it for quite a long time. I put a lot of effort into it, making the shari line and gins and wiring and pruning and styling. And, I'd show it to one of the apprentices, Marcus-san, and he was really impressed. It was really nice. And so I love moments like that. And I do definitely do that where respect is, or where someone works really hard on something. It doesn't matter whether they're just a beginner or they're just at the real pointy end of where they are with their bonsai, that, you give them a bit of a pat on the back along the way and say, you know what, that's really good. That's what you've done there. That's nice. That's really good work. And I think that being positive, and that's what I picked up from this trip too, was that not that I hadn't had it before, but my skills were at a point now where you could sort of get that proud moment, and you can use it. And I think being positive, and hopefully it comes across in this podcast, but 100% of everything I do with bonsai is positive, because I think you're going to get a far better development of any individual that loves bonsai by being positive with them than being negative. Anyone can look down their snout and be nasty and say horrible things and knock the wind out of someone's sails. But I think it takes real guts and real courage to pick a positive in something and say, you know what, don't worry about these parts. Look at this. Look at what you've done. Don't worry that you've knocked off that one branch that I said you had to save, that it's going to destroy the design if it's gone, because look at the positive part of what you've done. And that's what I picked up across this whole nursery, and everyone that was there was this positivity with things that, that everyone has a laugh and everyone has a joke, and, there's a bit of ridicule here and there, but overall it's a really positive experience that sort of drives everyone to get better. And it's from one positive building block comes a second, and then comes a third, and comes another and another and another. And sooner or later, your skill set keeps getting better and better, because you take that positive, you work on the negatives to make them become a positive also, and you keep building what you've got to get this repertoire of bonsai skills that then translates into the design side of your bonsai. So I always say with bonsai, there's 2 sides. There's a horticultural side and there's the design side. Horticultural is definitely involves skill. Like, it definitely involves a lot of knowledge and a lot of skill in how we do things. And then there's the design side is our bonsai technique. That's where it comes to the fore. Good wiring, or good pruning practices, or maintenance of wounds, anything, all that stuff, all the design components all come from really high end use of skills. And that's what that was one of the main things that I'd sort of picked up on the first part of the design on my time with the guys at Kouka-en, and like I said, it's something that sticks with me every single day. So as I was getting closer to the end of the trip, like I said, the focus from Mr. Fujikawa and everyone else that worked there with me was more independence. So I was getting more free will on things, and then I got given a beautiful shimpaku that needed work, needed styling. It was still in a terracotta clay pot, so it wasn't a bonsai that needed just refinement. It actually needed to be made into a bonsai from a nice base, a really nice base. And I got given this tree, and I got told, think about it, sit there and look at this tree and come up with a plan. And when I was ready with my plan, then to have a chat to Mr. Fujikawa and Bjorn, and then once the plan was signed off, I could proceed with the work. But I couldn't do anything until I'd come up with a plan, which was really good too. I really enjoyed that process, in that making me stop and think. And rather than, I'd been on this bender, this tear that I just wanted to get trees done quickly as I could, but this was like a stop moment. This was, okay, this is really important. You've got some raw material now that you need to make some serious decisions on, and you need to focus on it. You need to think about it. You don't jump straight into these things, because it's bloody hard to put it back on once you've cut it off. And you might, you can further refine design, of course you can, but this first styling is really important. And so I took that to heart. I really sat there and I thought, and I sketched out a plan, and I'd marked branches to gin, and and it was like a true test. I got told it was a test of what I'd learnt, what my vision was, this flow, the design intent that I had. My technique was going to get looked at closely as well, and it was really something that I had to show who Scott Martin was. What was it that you could bring to the table, and so like I said, I looked at that very, very seriously, and I learnt lots of different things about designing an apex of a tree, where the apex sort of comes down over the front to cover the neck of the tree. So as a trunk line comes up, and rather than showing the trunk all the way to the very tip of the tree, the apex starts to cover that over. And again, that's something that I run with every single day now when I work on my bonsai, stuff that I learnt back in 2013 about design intent in Osaka. I still use now, and I still talk about with my students and customers, that when I work on trees for them, or when I'm doing training, or they're in workshops, or whatever it is that I do, that something like that was passed on to me that I found really super important, is something that I pass on down the line as well, saying, hey, have you thought about this? This is the technique, and this is how we do it, and this is why it's important. Look at my designs, and your tree, your bonsai could follow along that sort of a path as well. So anyway, got given this tree, had to come up with a plan, had to seriously think about it, and had to present it, and did that, and sat down with Mr. Fujikawa and Bjorn and said, hey, listen, this is what I see. This is my vision. This is my plan. This is where I'd like this tree to go. Mr. Fujikawa takes the tree, spins it around the table, has a look at it, sits back, folds his arms, smokes his cigarette as he's leaning back, has another look, and he goes, yep, good. He agreed. He said, go for it. So he said, it was really up to me. So the base styling is what was signed off on. And he said the rest of it is up to you. So that's the skill, that's the wiring and whatever else, and the technique that you use to get there. So I took my time. I really did. I sat there and I worked on it for probably a day, and got it to a point where I was really happy. So I started with branch removal, gin creation, creating the shari first, then going through doing a bit of a prune up on the branch structure, clearing the underneath stuff, which is the same process as what I use now when I'm creating junipers, creating any bonsai, and then started the wiring process. And it took me a day and a half to work on this tree, and I really put everything that I had into it, and I made it look as good as I possibly could with the material. And when I compared the sketch that I'd made at the start to the finished product that I was looking at in front of me, I was really happy. Again, it was a really proud moment where I looked at it and went, you know what, you've done a pretty good job. And before I called anyone to come in and have a look at it, ran through the design and the technique that was used and said, is there anything that you can improve? Is there any part of this that you can fix? Is there anything that you can do? So I looked at branches where I'd, been a bit sloppy with some wiring. Yep, okay, fix that. Go in, make it perfect. So I did that a couple of times on different branches, looked at the pruning, prune this part. It really got it as finessed as I possibly could, to the point that I went, you know what, that's me. That is what I've learned in my short time doing bonsai. Picking up all the pieces of the puzzle that I'd learned in Osaka, but also what I'd learned the year before in Kouka-en, plus everything else I had along the way. This is it. This is the culmination of everything that I can do up to that point. And I was really happy. And it's hard. I remember being terrified to bring in these bonsai professionals that I admired greatly and still do to this day. Bjorn's one of the by far the best bonsai practitioners and artists anywhere in the world, hands down. And I think he will continue to be for the rest of his life. Mr. Fujikawa, the experience that he's got with his nursery and what he's seen and what he's done, it doesn't pale into insignificance when I think about that. I've got to present this tree to them that I've put the first fingerprint on to turn into a bonsai. And so I'll be honest, I was terrified and I was panicking. I was like, is this it? And then I found myself going over the tree again and again and again. I was like, just stop. They're not here. They're positive. They're not here to be negative to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this experience. So take on board whatever negatives come out of this. Take them on board and focus on them. Try and improve. It's the 1%ers. It's those little things that we can improve. So I went around the corner to the next room and said, "Yep, I'm ready. I think I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's tear the Band-Aid off and get this over and done with. Come on, come and see what I've done." And Mr. Fujikawa comes in, has a look, walks around, took his time, didn't say anything. Felt like hours went by. It was just a couple of minutes. He's looking at the tree, picking it up, studying it, looking under the branches, looking at the wiring, looking for any little detail, holding it back, spinning it around, sat down, looked at it, waited, got up, walked over, picked it up, holding it, saying nothing to anyone. Then he just turns around at me smiling. And in English, he says, "Very nice." And I went, "Oh, you just made my day, man." That's the best thing he probably could have ever said. And I said, "Okay, what needs to change?" And he spoke to Bjorn. Bjorn said, "No, there's nothing. That's it." He's really happy with what you've done. You've done a great job. Looks really nice. Looks really sharp. Looks really clean. Technique's good. It's great. That's a good first step. And I was like, "Oh, wow. That's, I read my notes. And I just wrote in there, "One happy Vegemite." I was really, really, really happy that I'd been given the tick on that one, because I just felt like I'd put so much into it. When I look back on it now and I look at the photos, definitely there's things I'd change and there's things I've learned since then. But up until that point, and I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is that we all get to a point where we're ecstatic, where we hit our peak, but then there's still more to learn. There's still further to go with your skills, and it might be the tiny refinements that we can make to make it better, but there's always something. And, we never stop learning, and learning is one of those things that till the day we're put in a timber box, to become worm food, we keep progressing and we keep learning, and you should never stop your focus being that there's always more to learn. Never close your mind to anything. And I was that day taking nothing away from it. I felt like I'd really started to achieve things and really started to progress, and it was around that point that that Bonsai Matsu, what I am here today, really started to take shape. In that, this is, you're starting to get it. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together now, and you're getting to a point where you can take this and you can refine it even further, and you don't mimic when you learn, you take it on board and you start to develop your own style and your own approach to things, and that's because we're all individuals and unique. And I really look back on that trip so favourably in Osaka as to the positivity of people's approach to someone who's a sponge, who's trying to learn, and how you can embrace that and take that forward and use it as a springboard far more than what you can if someone has scolded you or dragged you down to a point where, humiliation is not going to achieve anything by someone throwing in their scissors and going, well, that's it. It's no good for me. I'm on to something else. So went out. I also went out that night for a Japanese barbecue and beer with some of the fellas from the nursery, and it was one of those experiences that I don't think I'll ever forget in my life. So then after that, got given a last tree for the stay. Got told, here's a beautiful white pine. No instruction, no guidance, no pre-planning needed. It's your last tree. Show us what you've got. This is 100% up to you. There's no sign off. There's nothing. And it was really good for me because by that stage, I was on cloud nine. I was buzzing. I was ready. I was like, yep, cool, done. I'm at the next level. I mentally feel like I am ready to tear this thing to shreds because I have confidence in my approach and my skill and my ability that I can see a bonsai in this, and I don't need someone else to show me anymore. I can do it, and that was the case. It was I learned about pad refinement from that one as well, but structural selection and wiring technique and all that stuff. It was good, and it was really nice. And again, there was the final sign off and presentation of the tree, and it was right at the very end. And Mr. Fujikawa said, translated, that he was happy. He was really impressed with what I'd done during my stay and the standard that from where I started to where I am now in that short period of time. That he'd be happy for me to be his apprentice. I don't know if I could be a Japanese apprentice because these guys really put their heart and soul into it, and I think that they're brilliant for what they do, but I don't think that I could do it, and it was tongue in cheek anyway. So I took it for what it was, and I was really happy with what I'd achieved. Bought a swag of pots and loaded up my bike and zipped off back to my room to start packing for the trip home, which was, I was, like I said, I couldn't have been happier with the trip, with the stay, with the people, with the place, with the quality, with what I'd learnt. It was spectacular, to be honest. It was like I said, it was one of these things that I don't know. There's not many people I know that get the chance to immerse themselves at different Japanese bonsai nurseries to purely learn bonsai, and that exposure to different techniques and methodologies and approaches and outcomes is unique. It's rare, and I absorbed it I remember on the plane on the way home, just sitting back thinking, well, I've only got 18 hours of flying ahead of me. I might as well reminisce on the trip, and it was seen as really, really unique, and I was so grateful to my family for allowing me to do it, and what I could gather out of that, and that focus to become what I am now with bonsai, and passing on the love and the passion and the positivity is I'm really grateful, really, really grateful. So yeah, it was an amazing trip. So if you're ever in Osaka and you can get to Kouka-en, it's a brilliant nursery. It's purely one of the best, and they're lovely people that are there, and I will forever be indebted to what I learned in my short stay there. Lately I've been doing a lot of pruning and cleanup on junipers, and there was one part that I wrote a note about for this podcast, and I've titled it "Would Look Better Without That," because there's this one juniper that I've had for a long time, a little one, squat little one, and it had a nice sort of very low branch to the right-hand side, which I know why I kept it in the first place, because it was a nice filler and it gave me a fuller tree. So the smaller the tree, the more branches you should have down lower, because that's where they need it. So having a long, thin trunk on a squat showing small tree doesn't look the best when there's not many low-down branches. So I'd kept this long branch, and as the tree had evolved and there was back budding and things got a lot more compressed and the structure matured, started to fill in and become what it should have been originally from the original styling. This long branch on the right-hand side, lowest part of the tree, sort of started to look like it was too long. And if I was honest with myself, it was like, you're artificially bending this thing to sort of fill in that area where when you put your hand over it, your directional flow of the tree, the movement of the tree could then go to the left side because my first branch on this tree would then be on the left side. So by reshaping the apex, so it was sort of more moving towards the left-hand side, it would create like a nice sort of counterbalance, and the first branch would then be in a more appropriate position, and it wouldn't be this long stretched out branch. So it got me thinking, and I said to myself loudly in my workshop, would it look better without that? And I thought, it's a question we should all ask ourselves when it comes to our bonsai. It's really hard to put something back on once you've cut it off. So take your time, don't rush it, and don't say, hey, Scott said on the podcast it would be better without it, cut it off. But I think that more often than not, you can have a bonsai that's designed and structured. I see it a lot in my workshops where you get to the point where you're almost paralyzed to make the decision to cut it off. And the longer something's been there on the tree, the more attached you become to it and the harder it becomes to remove it. So, this question does look better without it. Maybe putting my hand over it and again getting a cloth, a white cloth, and putting it over the branch and looking at, I knew in heart of hearts that if it was a customer's tree, it would have been gone within the first 2 seconds of being on the branch, on the bench, because that branch looked out of place. It looked artificial and it looked contrived. It didn't look like it fit with the structure of the bonsai. So, yeah, sure, definitely would look better without it. But in my own mind, because it's one of my trees that I've worked on for such a long time that, I'm invested in, I'm giving love to this thing every single day of the year, that I just have to make sure in my own mind that it's the right thing to do structurally for the tree. So asking yourself that question, does it look better without it, and taking your time and using a computer program to maybe take it and etch it out of the design. Make sure that you've got everything right. But I guarantee you, making those tough decisions is what takes your bonsai to the next level. Don't go and strip off all the branches on the tree and just make a bucket load of gins, because that's not the point. But I think that when you're going through that design process and you look at something and go, would it look better without it? Luckily there's someone like me at the other end of the text message or the message to look at it and say, my 2 cents is yes, no, whatever. But just think about it from your own point of view, that if you've got doubts about something, go through the process, put your hand over it, cover it up, etch it out in a computer program. Does it look better? If it does, then, hey, take the risk, take the gamble, remove it, restructure the bonsai, redesign the flow of the tree to better suit what you've got left on the tree, and take a risk. If it looks crappy, if it's poor design, if it's not good bonsai, then make the change. So anyway, that's my 2 cents with that one that I came across when I've been doing exactly the same thing with my bonsai. So that wraps up this podcast. Thank you as always. Love it. Stay in touch. Any of the socials, best way to get me through Instagram or Facebook's probably the easiest ones to make sure they get directly through to me. You can get me on email with scott@bonsaimatsu.com. I'm always on the other end, always willing to give my 2 cents worth, and I'm grateful to every single person listening to this podcast. I appreciate your input, I appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate you just giving me your time. As I said, it's the most valuable asset I can get from you guys, and hopefully I keep you enthusiastic and involved with your bonsai and keep you pushing to that next level and keep striving and working on where you are now. It's like your bonsai, where your skill set is now, it can always get better, same as your bonsai can, same as all of our bonsai can, and all of our skills can get better over time as well. So keep pushing, keep learning, keep striving for perfection, and just be grateful that you'll never achieve it, because there's always something else to learn, something else to refine in your skill set. So take care, enjoy your bonsai, and keep on loving them, keep on giving them water, feed them if they need feeding, and look out for pests. And until next time, happy bonsai, eh?